No, that's okay. Interesting.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our April 27th, 2015 Planning Commission of the City of Fayetteville. Now's a perfect time to put your phone on silent or turn your phone off altogether, and that includes me. I need to check mine as well. If you need a listening device to help you better hear the meeting, just ask a member of staff and they'll be glad to provide one for you. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Hoskins.
Here.
Chesser.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Cook. Hoffman.
Here.
Bunt.
Here.
Noble. Selby.
Here.
Autry.
Here.
We have a few things on our consent agenda tonight. First is the approval of the minutes from April 13th, 2015 meeting. Number 2 is Admin 155049 of East Shiloh Drive and Redstone Drive. 3 is Vacation 155020, 2288 North Hidden Creek Drive. 4th is Variance 155036, 504 East Lafayette, Belden, and the 5th is Preliminary Plat 155032, North Harbor Isle Drive, and Zion Road, Woodbury Subdivision. Is there any member that would like to have one of these items pulled for further discussion? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second. Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Chesser and a second by Commissioner Selby. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Hoskins.
Yes.
Chesser.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Hoffman.
Yes.
Bunt.
Yes.
Selby.
Yes.
Autry.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. We have one item of old business this evening. It is rezone 154965, rezone the south end of Rupel Road and Rupel Road Extension. Excuse me. Mr. Garner, would you please give us the staff report on that?
Yes, ma'am. We discussed this item at your last Planning Commission meeting, so I won't give the full presentation again. I will just give the Commission an update of what's happened since the previous meeting. So here's the proposed zoning of the 642 acres. At the previous meeting, there was a neighbor that had concerns with some of the proposed zoning adjacent to these neighborhoods here in the south, in particular where she lived at Magnolia Crossing. So we have revised the zoning request to pull back this urban thoroughfare zoning that was along some of these corridors and extended the neighborhood conservation zoning. So there's the buffer of residential zoning between these neighborhoods and the commercial uses here around this roundabout. In addition, at the previous meeting, there was a couple of university students that work at the Woolsey Wet Prairie adjacent to the property, and they discussed some of the environmental qualities of this property. And we also heard from a couple of property owners in the area regarding their interest to develop the property. And I did have a meeting with a couple of the university students and another environmental activist in the area that we discussed some of the environmental qualities of this area. And I did want to give the Commission some background on, where environmental policies play into a zoning decision and how we've gotten to this point with this particular recommendation, and try to give the Commission some advice on where to go with some of the concerns from some of the environmental groups. So just as a general background, when you're looking at a rezoning request, there's two primary things the Commission need to look at. One of them is land use compatibility. Would the proposed zoning be compatible with surrounding land uses? And that's really the primary thing to look at. The second thing is what does the future land use plan anticipate for the area? And so we feel like the proposed zoning here would be compatible with the planned development coming through here. And as far as the environmental concerns and things that have come up, when we do generate the future land use plan map, we have incorporated a lot of environmental concerns and recommendations into the designations in our future land use map. For example, we use Fayetteville Natural Heritage Association's designation of this area, which shows it as high-quality habitat, we use that as background to create what we call an enduring green network map. And that's one of the background policy maps that we have in our City Plan 2030. And that map was used to create the future land use plan map. And on the future land use plan map, it shows several of these floodplains and throughout the property as natural area. So as you can see here, we are proposing, that's where these designations of residential agricultural came from, to be consistent with that future land use plan map. It is about 77 acres of property into that low density, low intensity type of development pattern. And I did want to discuss a minute the Enduring Green Network map and kind of the intent. That's one of our primary goals of City Plan 2030, is to create an enduring green network with linkages and connections throughout the city. And that doesn't mean that if a piece of property is in the enduring green network that the whole thing has to be preserved. It really just means that this is an area of town where we may be looking for a linkage or a connection, or there may be some unique features that need to be incorporated sensitively into a development. And we do have some tools to preserve land. One of those is parkland dedication. And so I think what I would recommend the commission do, I will pull up here an exhibit that was presented from one of the university students, and talking about what areas of the site are better habitat. And so this is what Ms. Cross emailed me earlier today. So this is just a general sketch showing this is the Woolsey Wet Prairie, this is the 642 acres, and these are the areas where she's shown as higher quality habitat that they've identified, or just, you know, from their bird's eye view. And so I would recommend that the commission forward this rezoning up onto the city council for their consideration, making consideration of some of the environmental issues we've heard here, and possibly, if you feel like it, making a recommendation that they look at accepting land in lieu of fees for parkland dedication. And if this property builds out at the density we're proposing for the rezone, it would allow up to approximately 3,200 dwelling units. And with a basic parkland formula, that would add up to almost 75 acres of parkland that's required to be dedicated. So the combination of preserving some of these riparian areas in addition to parkland, we can maybe start to assemble some of the corridors and the habitat linkages that we're hearing about. We also talked about potentially doing something different regarding preserving upland prairie. We currently have no ordinances or regulations at all about that, so I can't advise the commission on, there's nothing in our zoning regulations or development regulations that require any sort of preservation of upland prairie, other than when we're looking at a rezoning, looking at all the factors that I've mentioned here. If the commission feel like that's something they want to recommend, that would be something for the city council to look at, and potentially that would be some sort of an ordinance change or a development ordinance. So that's not something that we can advise really with this rezoning, but I think it is something that, as an advisory body to the council, you could certainly, they would certainly be interested in your opinions if you have those on that topic. That kind of summarizes the background of where we're at today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Now, I guess we open the floor up to public comment on this item. I would like for you to come up and state your name clearly for the record, and looks like we may have a lot of people here to discuss this. If you can, please keep your comments as brief as possible, and if at all possible, try not to basically repeat what the person before you has just said. So if you want to open the floor up to public comment, I'll do that at this time.
I'm Chelsea Cross, and I just wanted to say thank you for your time, and if you have any questions about the map or anything, I'm in agreement with Mr. Garner's proposal of making it parkland instead of in lieu of cash. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Megan Miller, and I wanted to say thank you as well. I did have a question for the south end of the Rupel expansion. Roughly, what is the distance of that neighborhood conservation buffer? $187 feet, so further south it would be closer to 200?
Do you want me to, just
Yeah.
wait till we're through with public comment?
Oh.
So you want to know
Yes.
the distance between?
I was a little further south.
So is that your only concern this
Yes,
evening?
I was just wondering.
Okay, well,
Thank you
we'll
very
check
much.
that out when we're done with public comment. Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public to address this issue? Seeing no other public comment, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Chesser.
I have a question for staff. Andrew, would you mind pulling back up the map prepared, I guess, by that one? I'm sorry, I can't read that from here. Can you tell me about what's going on up there? I can't see the legend, really.
Sure. When I met with Ms. Cross and some others last week, I recommended that they, if possible, they could put together some sort of exhibit showing the environmental qualities, a general habitat map of the area. And so this is kind of what they've put together, showing that this yellow and green areas really are what it appears to them to be the best quality habitat on the property. And so I think that's what you're seeing here is
Right.
this is where they had some of the crawfish frogs that were crossing the roads, and they've heard calls and breeding grounds and things like that. So that's kind of what the yellow and green, closest to Broyles and directly across the street from Woolsey Wet Prairie. I think part of the reason they feel like this is higher quality habitat is also just to get that linkage and connection directly from, this created wetlands onto this property.
Okay, and so so the green and the yellow are both prepared by them. Those aren't. I was trying to figure out if the parkland was something you had put in to show like a comparison of what 75 acres would look like or something like that.
No.
That's not none of that is your work up there.
No.
That's 100% an exhibit that they prepared.
Right.
And so, if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying that it might be possible to sort of use parkland dedication in this area generally, potentially in that specific area in some way. Am I hearing that right?
Whenever a development comes through, for single-family homes, they have to, or multifamily, you have to dedicate land for parks. If the city does not want to accept land, or the developer does not want to give land, they can pay fees in lieu of. That's what the Planning Commission typically sees, is that they pay money in lieu of giving land to the city. On a site like this, where we have really high-quality habitat, it would be possible to accept land for these types of reasons, to allow for preservation or passive recreation, things like that. And it would have to go through the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and then ultimately the Planning Commission makes the decision on every development whether to take land or money in lieu. And so I haven't talked to the Parks Department about this, and so I'm just throwing that out there, as that is one tool that is in the city's toolbox to preserve land, is acquiring parkland through development.
But I'm assuming that all the property that's being rezoned is not owned by the same party. It's not, is it?
That's correct.
So I guess my question is, I'm not sure how it comes out that particular section would necessarily be the section that gets dedicated as park. That would be the point, right? The purpose would be to maybe dedicate that portion as parkland.
Mm-hmm.
That's shown in green right now. And my assumption is this is really going to be a patchwork of developments, each of which would have its own parkland requirements, most of which would not fall into that dark green area.
Right.
So that's the part where I don't understand how that dark green area becomes the parkland in that case.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the parkland dedication ordinance would be able to get a swath of this entire area. I'm just saying that as each development comes through, land can be acquired, and it may not be exactly where this green blob is. You know, only a very small portion of this might actually be able to be dedicated, depending on what parcel was being developed at that time. And, you know, there's only a certain percentage of every site that has to give land. So
Right, that's why I wasn't sure. That's what I was trying to figure out. Okay, so, can you give me an idea of roughly how much area that is? No way to tell? Not easy to tell. Okay, and I guess, I think I heard you right in saying that basically there's no real zoning that we could put on that section to accomplish this. Am I hearing that right?
that's correct.
Okay, so there's no real solution. Because Upland Prairie is not a high priority preservation area, there's no real solution to sort of make this a nature reserve in any way?
That's correct, unless the city or a private party decided to purchase it and the existing property owner decided they wanted to sell it.
Okay. Okay, so that's just, essentially it's not something you would do through zoning, is what you're saying.
That's correct. We certainly, we do not have any zoning tools in our existing zoning for something like this. I mean, the only other option would be if a developer came through with a planned zoning district and they proposed to, you know, do some sort of a cluster development or a conservation development and preserve certain areas into perpetuity. That could happen. That would be through a special master planned community.
Okay. I had one other thing, but now I've
Madam
lost it.
Chair, could I ask a question of the planner? Just to step in, and you can continue on with your questions, but I wanted to keep it
Sure.
in line with the direction you were going.
Fine.
Is that all
Mr.
right
Brown.
for me to ask a question?
That'll be fine.
Okay. I was wondering, is there a way that information about those areas can be put on either the master plan map or the future land use map, or some kind of a map so that those people in the community that are planning to do something in that area can see that there is some value, environmental elements out there, and that also our Parks and Recreation people would be able to see that, and that we in the Planning Commission, it would be in front of us that we could see it when we're looking at subdivision, proposals as they come through. So we're reminded about that environmental value.
Excuse me, I hate to interrupt you, but I'm unsure. Are you asking if we should put a designation on any piece of property that there might possibly be some environmental value, or is just this particular piece of property, or, because that's kind of just in general across the city. Is that what you're asking for?
Are you
Commissioner?
asking
I'm
me?
asking you, Commissioner
Oh, I'm
Brown,
sorry,
yeah.
okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I was just wondering, we were talking about vehicles, of being able to integrate this information into the decision-making in the future. And I was thinking that if we could put it on a map that is official, then we are able to, see that and not forget about it.
Okay.
I think the only way I can really think of to do that would be to amend the future land use plan map.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of the backbone behind it, guides future land use plan decisions. If that map were amended, for example, to show the natural area of this property in this green blob here, as opposed to, right now, it's showing natural area down here, and over here. Well, maybe the commission recommends we amend the future land use plan map to show more in this area. That could take place.
Yeah, and that might have some value to help us make sure that it's considered when, in future decisions are being made. Right now, it's just a map that we're looking at on the wall and there's no guarantee that in the future we'll remember about it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other comments? Mr. Garner, could you put up the map that shows the, we see the yellow underneath this green area that shows the, RA areas that you have.
So this is the proposed zoning. This is Woolsey Wet Prairie right here. So the areas that they've identified as being the higher quality habitat, you know, generally in these areas right over here.
Okay. Okay.
Could I ask another related question to the staff? You mentioned about the enduring green map.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something that this information about these particular environmental areas could be added to that map?
Well, it already is.
It is in it? Oh,
Yes.
good.
I mean,
Okay.
this exact drawing that, you know, this exhibit that Ms. Cross presented to us, you know, that's not, this particular area is not shown, this polygon, but I think this whole area has been mapped by the Fayetteville Natural Heritage Association, and that was incorporated into our Enduring Green Network map. So
Good.
I think we've identified this area, you know,
Okay.
through that process.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Chetzer.
I did have one other question, Andrew, that I just recalled. We talked at agenda session of talking, was there any report from, I think, the Environmental Action Committee, I think is what you called it?
Mm-hmm.
Did we hear anything from that? I guess that's been too brief a time ago.
Yeah, I've spoken to the Sustainability Director, Peter Nierengarten. He staffs the Environmental Action Committee, and we're planning on presenting this item to the Environmental Action Committee probably at the same time it's going through the council readings. I think we also have another large item on their agenda coming up. So this has not been heard at the Environmental Action Committee yet.
Okay, and as relates to Commissioner Brown's comment, I assume that, you know, to some degree, this discussion is now a part of the public record, and I would assume that the City Council will take note of this discussion and that exhibit will be included in their packet as well, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. I would have no problem at all passing this on to the City Council and letting them, with recommendations for kind of a review of some of the areas. I think this is a pretty good plan as it is. I would like to see some preservation possibly next to the Woolsey wetland area, and I think this is possible that we can move some of the areas around a park dedication or the RA areas and accomplish that.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Autry?
Just a comment only, this is a natural growth function of the city that's been on the master street plan for 15+ years. So it's going to be the north-south tie that's going to basically create the box that we're looking for the city of Fayetteville. The staff's proposal and use to rezone everything as a whole so that we are able to have future projects and future ideas come before the commission here, that we do this as a whole instead of piecemeal each time. So that's going to cover more of make it easier for future developers to get their plan through. I like the idea of the dedicated parkland. How that may work out would be to be determined, but I think it should be something inclusive in it. But consider it's very compatible with concurrent zoning and usage. I would be able to support the plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I had one other question.
Commissioner Chesser?
Did we answer the member of the public's question about the distance?
We did not yet. Does anybody have the, I forgot, the distance between was it urban thoroughfare?
Yeah, you can see here on this exhibit, I didn't dimension all along this entire area, but this is 187 feet was from this property line to this community services, And so it pinches down a little bit smaller than that, but, there's quite a bit, at least, you know, close to 200 feet is the narrowest, and then it widens out here to probably double that down at this area.
Okay, okay, thank you very much. Do we have any motions then?
Madam Chair.
What was the staff's, recommendation again? If you could remind me?
Yeah. We recommend this be forwarded on to the full city council, and if you have, if you have any special considerations you would like to make mention of, I would make that in your motion, such as we would recommend the council look at accepting land in lieu of money for parkland to try to preserve some of these areas. If you have any other concerns, like any sort of special preservation ordinance you want to make mention of, you could make a mention of that in your motion as well.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Hoskins?
question for staff. Andrew, isn't it correct that whenever large-scale developments or preliminary plats come through, that it's basically up to the property owner or the developer as to whether they want to dedicate parkland or give money in lieu?
That's
Okay,
correct.
so as far as us saying that we want to intentionally set this aside for parkland, that's really not within our purvey. But we can say that we'll work with developers as they come through. But as a matter of this zoning, it's probably really not very relevant at this point.
The developer can propose to give parkland or pay money in lieu. The parkland, the Park Recreation Advisory Board also has influence on whether they want to accept land or not. So it's a two-way street. You know, usually you try to come to a consensus if they're wanting to give land and the city wants to accept it as a park. So that's
But it's not automatic that the city can demand land.
right.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I have a question for staff also. On when it's heard by the Environmental Action Committee, you're going to try and do that at the same time it goes to City Council? Is that what you're thinking?
Correct.
Does you have another?
Yeah, I'm anticipating this, you know, the Environmental Action Committee is made up of, it's a committee that advises City Council on environmental matters like this, so I think that would be appropriate on this particular request.
Okay, all right.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Chesser?
I'm going to move that we forward rezone 15-4965 to the City Council with the recommendation for approval and also recommendation that they pay some special attention to the areas that we've discussed tonight and I guess even consider the possibility of master plan amendment, at least to take a look at it and see if there are any options we have, because I do think that this is worth scrutinizing a little more carefully before we come to a final decision. I don't think that there are other staff, yeah. Let's see, do I have to make any findings here, Andrew?
No, I think you did it in your motion.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Hoffman?
I'd just like to, again, go on record stating that I think that it would be very good for us to look at the possibility of creating a new ordinance specifically dealing with conservation developments for this area.
Thank you very much. We have a motion. Second. Sorry. We have a motion by Commissioner Chesser and a second by Commissioner Selby. I have a question before we take a vote on this. Were the suggestions, were they clear enough? Okay.
I think so.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And Andrew, would you please call the roll?
Hoskins?
Yes.
Jesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Our next item of business is conditional use 155022, conditional use for 4201 North Shiloh Drive, Northwest Arkansas Mall, and it is for the use of a temporary carnival on the mall parking lot. Mr. Fulcher, can you please give us the staff report on this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The document I'm passing around is just, it has two dates updated on it from the original letter that's in your report. They just switched the dates to make the operation a little bit longer, still within code. But I wanted you to have that for the record, and I'll mention those in the conditions as well. Obviously, we all are aware of where the Northwest Arkansas Mall property is. They've got about 4,000 parking spaces up there, and they're looking at allowing a small area of that entire property to be utilized for a temporary carnival. That's a use allowed under Use Unit 2. It does have a maximum operation of the carnival of 7 days, and a minimum separation from residential dwellings of 500 feet. The carnival is going to be set up at the southeast corner of the mall property, which is out by College Avenue. There at the stoplight that takes you into the Chick-fil-A property on the other side of College. The closest residence is about a half mile away, the condominiums on the west side of the mall property. Did want to mention that when we send notification, or when the applicants send notification to condominiums, that's typically going to a POA and not to every single individual owner. We did contact the POA or the main office there and sent them an email to help distribute that information out. I haven't heard from any property owners over there. There could be some here tonight. We are recommending approval of this conditional use. It's subject to 5 conditions of approval. As noted in the revised information I gave you tonight, the carnival will operate for 7 days between August 3rd and August 11th, and that will be the new date. So they extended it 2 days. Their setup was extended by a day, and then their operations were extended by 2 days. The operation would be less than 7 days as far as when they're open. The carnival under Condition 2 is subject to the outdoor noise ordinance, which would be enforced by the Fayetteville Police Department. Item 3, signs would have to comply with the city's sign ordinance. And then item 4, just to cover all, and I'm sure that the mall property owners will take care of this, but went ahead and put that condition in there that the site would be cleaned up and all items removed by August 12th, based on the new date. So that would be a day after they said that they would be gone from the property. Other than that, I don't have any other comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Fulcher. Is the applicant present? If you are, please come up and state your name and tell us a little bit about your request.
My name is Andrew Burlingame with Pride Amusement Carnival, my 50th year doing them. So we just like to play the shopping centers, and with all of our equipment, none of it has to be driven in. No stakes or nothing in the ground, or everything is modern. We have a $2 million policy with a $10 million aggregate. So that's
Okay.
that's about all I got.
Did you say your last name was Cunningham? Is that
Burlingame.
Burlingame. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, we'd open the floor for any public comment that we may have. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the commission.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Hall.
I just have one question. How does this coincide with the Washington County Fair? Or is this in lieu of Washington County Fair?
Yeah, I'm not sure you mean on the timing of it, or,
About the same time.
I'm not sure. It is similar, yeah, it's near the start of the school year. I don't know.
That's interesting.
I'm not sure myself.
Okay, thanks.
I know that there's been a carnival on the mall parking lot. I don't know how many times I've seen it, but it's been there many times before, and so I would have no problem with allowing this. I think it's pretty much the standard that something they've been doing in the past, so.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Chesser.
I concur with that, and I've actually seen them in a little bit south several times too. While Commissioner Hoskins' point, actually I hadn't thought about that. It makes sense to me, but I don't think it's our duty to protect the Washington County Fair necessarily, and I see no reason to disallow this, so I'm going to move that we approve CUP 15-5022 with staff recommendations of approval.
Second. Thank you very much. I have a motion made by Commissioner Chesser and a second by Commissioner Selby. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Hoskins?
Yes.
Chesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, and our next item is conditional use permit 155028, conditional use at the intersection of History Drive and Dead Horse Mountain Road for Riverwalk subdivision pool. And Mr. Thompson, you need to give us the staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This subject property is located within a subdivision known as Riverwalk. It's largely unbuilt on the west side of Dead Horse Mountain Road. The property is zoned RSF4, and all along the intention has been to, my understanding is to build a swimming pool at this location. Community pool is allowed by conditional use permit in this zone. The applicant is requesting that now and has given us a few limitations of their own, which I'll address in the conditions. I've received no public comment as yet on this proposal. And in general, staff find that this request is unlikely to adversely affect public interest in any way. It's typical use for a subdivision of this type, and the nearest residences are approximately 200 feet away. That will not be a part of the subdivision, so staff's recommending approval of this request with a couple of conditions that I'd like to point out specifically. Those would be the applicant self-imposed limitation of hours of operation between 9 a.m. and 10 p.m., 7 days a week during the summer months, which I interpreted as May through September. I think those are typical months for typical periods for pools to be open. And we wanted to add that all outdoor lighting should comply with our requirements for Chapter 176, our outdoor lighting ordinance, and be limited to poles or heights of approximately 12 feet in order to reduce the potential that would flood out beyond the pool area, immediate area. That's the report. I'd like to answer questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you very much. Is the applicant present?
Yeah.
If so, please tell us about your request.
Planning Commission, my name's Dave Jorgensen. I'm here to answer questions, and as Quinn mentioned, it's a fairly simple request, a conditional use for a pool. Be glad to answer questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll bring that, do we have any public comment on this issue? Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public comment and bring it back to the commissioners.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Chesser.
just a technical question for staff. Quinn, or whoever wants to answer, I'm assuming that if we're putting the times of operation into this conditional use, if that was ever desired to be changed, would they just come back to us to ask to amend the condition?
That's correct.
Okay, and I'm assuming that they can invoke through POA or something a shorter time. They can close it whenever they choose to. We're not.
Absolutely, and we're assuming that activity there will be policed by the neighborhood. I think that's
right.
Typical. It's their pool, and so we're not really overly concerned about that. If it does go later, then I would expect that to be addressed internally.
Okay.
But you're
I just
correct.
didn't.
They can self-limit that even further if they choose to do so.
Okay, I didn't want it to become I don't want it to become an enforcement issue for the city to enforce what should be a POA's enforcement. That's the only comment I have. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion, and if people want to discuss it, that's I would understand. I'm going to move that we approve CUP 15-5028 with staff recommendations of approval.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion made by Commissioner Chesser and a second by Commissioner Autry. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Hoskins?
Yes.
Chesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Our next item of new business is administrative item 155035, north of Quail Drive and Raven Lane in Crystal Springs subdivision. Mr. Fulcher, would you please give us the staff report?
I will. Thank you, Madam Chair.
This is about 92 acres, Andrew. So right here on the screen, we have a good enough angle here to point this out. Called Crystal Springs Phase 4, and that's because there was a development on this site that was approved back in 2006. Crystal Springs subdivisions, located here in the north, Phase 1, 2, and 3, were approved over the last 20 years in that area. Crystal Springs Phase 4 was approved in '06 for 273 single-family lots. As part of that development, they were required to build a bridge over Clabber Creek to connect into Crystal Springs Phase 3. That went through some discussions with the City Council as far as where they connected to the south. A resolution was passed. Ultimately, though, Crystal Springs Phase 4 was never built. That project expired, and all the approvals, the resolutions, and everything associated with that project are now expired. The property owners have come back to the city and are looking to try to construct Crystal Springs Phase 4 once again. Their question that they're really having is, as part of their costing of the development and their design of the subdivision, is about building the bridge over Clabber Creek and whether that will be a requirement today or not. I passed out some letters that we've received as late as this morning, objecting to some portions of this request. I wanted to take a minute to really describe as much as I can in detail what the request is and what the request is not. The connection over Clabber Creek, the extension of Raven Lane, and Andrew, if you could back that out so we could see all the way down to Mount Comfort. So the connection from Raven Lane through the subdivision over Clabber Creek is on the city's master street plan. That's an adopted master street plan. It's been there for over 15 years. And that's why it was part of the Crystal Springs Phase 4 when it came through in 2006, and a requirement for them to build it. That has not changed. That was adopted again in 2011 by the Planning Commission and City Council. There are other master street plans that traverse through this property. What the applicants are asking is, do they have to build the bridge? That is, should the master street plan remain on the plan, or should it be removed, that extension over Clabber Creek? They're not asking about the connections to the south. They're not asking, should they connect through Gooseberry? They're not asking, should they connect through Raven? They're not asking if they should connect through Woodlark. Those will be discussed at the time of the subdivision, when that comes through. In preparation of how they design their subdivision and how they look at the financing of the subdivision, they're asking, are we going to have to build this bridge or not? So really, that is the discussion tonight. Should the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council the removal of the bridge connection? Raven Lane may or may not be extended to some degree through their development, but where it gets up to the creek, are they going to build that connection over the water? That's what the applicants are requesting the Planning Commission to consider. Currently, there are 4 bridge connections in this area. There's one on Dean Solomon, one on Salem, one on Mount Comfort. Excuse me, that would be 3, and this, I believe, would be the 4th connection in the area. So there's a number of north-south bridge connections over Clabber Creek in this area. Certainly building another bridge in this area would help connectivity. But there are some costs to that. Obviously, once a developer has moved on, that becomes a public infrastructure project that's maintained in perpetuity. Of course, that's a long way down the road when you would have to do anything with that bridge, but it is a long-term cost. And of course, there are also environmental concerns. Clabber Creek is a natural area in this location. There hasn't been any crossings. There's no real development adjacent to it. So it's in very good condition in this area. And so there's obviously some environmental impacts that would take place if you had to bridge over Clabber Creek to the grading. Really, our concern from staff level is how do they develop this property if they put in 270 some odd lots and distribute traffic without impacting any one street too much or any one neighborhood too much. It's possible that they may have multiple street connections from their development, but the question is, should we recommend that they remove the bridge connection at this point before we see what other connectivity issues come about? Our concern is that if the bridge connection is removed at this point and they're unable to secure any connections to the west, they do not own the property to the west over to Salem, or secure connections east over to Dean Solomon, they do not own property between their property and Dean Solomon, then they have no other connection points other than through the subdivisions to the south. And that would obviously give us a lot of concern. And so that's why we're recommending that this be tabled at this point. There's just not enough information, there's not enough guarantees to remove a master street plan crossing that's been there for 15 years without some additional guarantees for connectivity. We feel like they may be making some progress with some connections in other directions, not through the existing subdivisions to the north and south, but through less developed land to the east and west. But we don't have those guarantees in front of us, and so we're not sure exactly how those will pan out. And that's really why we're recommending this be tabled, not for 2 weeks, but indefinitely, because this, obviously discussions with adjacent property owners could take a good amount of time. We can't guarantee that that would be 2 weeks. So we're recommending that it be tabled indefinitely and allow them to work through some agreements with other connections, and then potentially come back to the planning commission after giving notification again to the neighbors with a new proposal and some new guarantees. Or however they want to proceed, they may come back with a phased development where they don't build the bridge with the first phase, and maybe they're allowed to do some number of houses. I included the resolution from 2006, and that's kind of how it was set up. They had multiple phases, and they were essentially granted X number of lots before they had to start doing the bridge improvement. So obviously a very small subdivision wouldn't have enormous impacts on any one street if they connected to it, but it's the accumulative effect of 270 plus lots that would be very detrimental to traffic to the north and south. Again, we see some benefits to not constructing the bridge, but at this point there's just not enough guarantees in place for us to recommend that that be done. So we recommend that this be tabled, and with that I'll pass it on to the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Garner, I've completely blanked on this. I go ahead and ask for public comment, and the applicant, even if we do end up tabling it?
Yes, yes, so at this point, we want to hear from the applicant
Okay.
and then the public.
Okay. Is the applicant present tonight?
My name is Howard Davis, and I'm the general partner of Crystal Springs who made this application. One of the things that two or three things that I don't like about the bridge. One of them, of course, is what it does to the floodplain and the floodway. Building, supposedly it's going to be at the road to the bridge and away from the bridge is going to be 6 or 7 feet high. I don't like that idea. I started Crystal Springs in 1993, so I've been here for a while, and we gave the property to the school. We gave the property for the parks to the city. We like to think that we've been a positive impact on what we've done down there. We've done 3 phases. This phase, one of the things I don't like about it is, and don't like about it a lot, is that it dumps all the traffic that would use that bridge into a subdivision that already exists, into the neighborhood in front of a school. So we will find other ways out, and of course if we don't, we won't be able to build it anyway. So I see no reason for this bridge other than the fact that 15 years ago, that's sometime after we started Crystal Springs and before now, other than that one fact, I don't see any reason to leave it on here. We have in the past and will if this works out in the future, take that property either and give it to the city that the bridge would have been on, that they can use for something a whole lot better than a bridge that dumps into my other neighborhoods.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Do we have any public comment on this evening? Can you speak for? Go ahead, that'll be fine.
Mr. Davis represented the owners and developers, and I've been the engineer on
Sir,
this
I did not catch your name, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm Melvin Milholland.
Thank you.
Milholland Engineering. And we've been involved in the design since about day one. One of the reasons that we're here, my understanding is what is the best and appropriate way to distribute traffic if this piece of land is developed. It's been said that the property to the north of this proposed location doesn't need a bridge. They already have exits to the east, to Dean Solomon, to the west, to Salem, to the north and south, major arteries. A lot more area there, north of this creek, that's developed and will be developed south of the creek. Are pretty close to the same amount if the golf course comes through and develops sometime. But, I haven't seen yet the existing master street plan on the board yet. And if it was put up, we'll find that you do have a master street plan to the east, to Dean Solomon, to the west, to Salem, as well as south to Mount Comfort, and one through the north course to where the bridge is proposed. And what we were proposing to do is to have these relocated to a more appropriate location to the east, and of course to the west, be a minor adjustment to that one, and to the south, and for what we feel like a more equitable distribution of traffic on the south side of the creek, just like the north side of the creek, is go east and west, and also could go south also. If the bridge would not contribute and benefit those north of the creek, which are already existing, most of them, about the same size of development, say, on the south side could probably have distribution to an existing major artery on the east side, which is Dean Solomon, as well as the one on the west side, which is Salem, as well as the one down to Mount Comfort, just like the ones up there do. So as representing my viewpoint of why we're asking to have amendment to the master street plan is based on the practicality that is already existing north of the creek. It exists also south of the creek with the same type of distribution of traffic going to the east to a major artery, and to the west and to the south. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now do we have any member of the public that would like to speak to this issue? If so, come up and state your name and give us your comments, please.
Good evening. My name is Vicki Kelly, and I'm a resident on Raven Lane. It's a beautiful subdivision. It's quiet, a lot of people walking the streets and walking their dogs. My concern with this bridge is that it will route additional traffic through our subdivision and disturb the quiet enjoyment of our property.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jim Kimbrough. I live at 2428 North Salem Road. My brother Les and I own the property on the west of all of that area where we're wanting to come across not only one road from the last street plan, but now two, one that kind of comes right through the back of my driveway and uses my driveway to come across. There is no west access from that deal unless it comes through me. My brother and I don't want to sell that property. You don't get to go to the school unless you have the bridge. That's why, that's probably imperative to keep that like that, unless something happens to where we don't get to keep our property. But that's not our intent. We want to be able to maintain it just as it is without any roads coming through it. So I appreciate the fact that that you're thinking about tabling it, because I think there needs to be a little work done. Maybe look at the golf course. I think that changes. I may be wrong, but I don't think it stays a Razorback golf course. And I don't see anything going east through there except maybe up through a couple of little duplexes. So there's a lot of work that could be done. Maybe you don't have to impose on another private property owner by drawing streets through there, which we don't want. And I think it's wise to go ahead and table the thing. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
My name's Kevin Smith. I live in Gooseberry Lane. And actually, can I ask a question? On the master street plan, there's a dotted line going from Berry Lane into this development. What does that dotted line mean?
Okay, we'll address your comments after we get done with all the public comment. We'll find out what the dotted line is for you.
Okay. All right.
Okay?
Wanted to beg not to ruin Gooseberry Lane. There are trees there. If that is a road, there are trees there that will be cut down. Gooseberry Lane's a one street long lane of a bunch of houses that are built on half-acre to acre-and-a-half lots. So everything you've approved around us is much smaller. Gooseberry's a great place. I would hate to see traffic routed through this very narrow street to get out to Mount Comfort. Also wanted to say Mount Comfort is a road at 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning is very horrible. To route more traffic there would be not pleasant. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Bill Overby. I'm a 35-year resident of Bird Haven. 30 years. I'm the northmost home in the on the cul-de-sac on Woodlark, so I'm affected pretty strongly by the proposal that the Mulholland firm has done. I just want to say I support very strongly tabling this motion. I think that's a smart thing to do. I think we need to keep the bridge. One thing I would ask that if the committee can do it, and hopefully staff will agree, although it's a little more work, notifications this time were based on adjacent property owners. And I really think when we come back to this issue and we start talking about the connectivity, which is going to be why almost all these people are here tonight, that we notify the whole subdivision, if that's at all possible. Again, we can do what we did this time, and when I get my letter, I can spread it through the neighborhood. But it just seems like the thing we need to do this time, when we come back to this issue, to lay out the subdivision, whenever that might be. If you wouldn't mind, please notify the entire subdivision. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else? Okay.
My name is Joyce Thompson, and my husband and I have lived on Gooseberry Lane for almost 43 years. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but Gooseberry is not built to city street standards. It was built, with my understanding, many years ago with an assessment to the property owners. It's just a narrow street with a very thin coat of pavement. No sidewalks, no curbs, no gutters. On the map, it looks like Gooseberry Lane is one of those that's scheduled to be extended to the north to meet this new subdivision. So obviously, I have a vested interest. I don't want any more traffic on Gooseberry Lane. But at the same time, I don't want to see more traffic funnel south onto Mount Comfort. That was an old country road, and yes, it has been widened in the last few years, but all that has done is just encourage more and more and more traffic. We have all these developments to the west. We have a lot of people, believe it or not, coming off of Weddington, going up to Mount Comfort, because they want to avoid that 49 and Weddington nightmare of a stoplight, 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 stoplight. Anything, whether it's Raven, whether it's Gooseberry, whether it's Woodlark, anything that encourages more traffic to come south on Mount Comfort, where all these driveways from Shiloh all the way to Salem, there's one house after another. There's not only Gooseberry Lane, but there's all this Bird Haven Terrace and Crofton Manor. They all open onto Mount Comfort, and that's their only way out. So anything that puts more traffic onto Mount Comfort, as far as I'm concerned, is a bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have anyone else? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Burke Russell. I live at 2395 Gooseberry. I'm at the very end of Gooseberry Lane. I live across the street from Joyce and Jack. I'm concerned that they want to increase the traffic flow on Gooseberry, which I'm completely opposed to. It's a very quiet, peaceful street, and I appreciate the developer's predicament. I've talked to Jesse Fulcher. I've looked at the map and all of that. I've got a background in engineering, but I don't think that the solution that they're working on, I think it affects too many people in a negative way. Just because they want to add a bunch of houses of people that don't live there yet. It affects those of us that live on Raven and Meadowlark and in that area. And I just think it'll be detrimental to those of us that have lived there. I've only lived there for 3 years. I'm the second owner of that house. It was built in '62. And I've just gotten started on doing my stuff to the house. And I don't want to you know, I don't want to see the neighborhood decline because of all the traffic that's going to be added with this new development, or however they propose to change the streets. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Betty Patrick, and I have lived on Gooseberry Lane for 45 years this month. And I love my little street. It has its pros and cons, but I still love it. I have talked to Mel Milholland a couple of times in the last couple of weeks to kind of pick his brain to see what is going on with the street. And I agree with him on some of the suggestions. And it might be more cost effective if you want to do it on Raven or Woodlark or wherever. They have curbs and gutters, which would be more cost effective. We don't have curbs, we don't have gutters, just like a little country blacktop road out there. And I have a really nice rock work that was pretty expensive 10 years ago on each side of my driveway. I'd really like to keep it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Anybody else? Now's your chance.
Hi, I'm Dave Rowden. I live at 3200 North Raven, and I do oppose them putting in that bridge. I don't think that they need any more traffic on Mount Comfort, and right now at 8 o'clock in the morning, it backs all the way up to Salem now, and you put in another light and another turn right there, it's just going to make it even worse. It's just pretty much a choke point right there, so I do oppose them building this bridge.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Madam Chairman. I'm John Pomeranski. I live at 2732 Meadowlark. I've lived there for, I believe, 33 years now. I've seen that neighborhood or subdivision being built. It's a lovely little neighborhood, a lot of older homes. A lot of us lived there half our lifetime. My wife loves to walk our dogs. We got the most spoiled dogs you can ever hope for in the neighborhood. There are no sidewalks. She is forced to walk out in the middle of the road. We've got school children that wait on the school bus every morning and every evening at the corner of Raven and Mount Comfort and Woodlark, throughout the neighborhood catching the bus. They're out in the middle of the street because there's no other place for them to stand. Years ago, when this development was proposed and bridge was proposed, a city council member made the comment to me that the bridge would be a great idea to give you another exit from your neighborhood. Yes, it would. If that development is built, I would like to see the bridge be a part of that requirement, not to funnel everything back to the south through our quiet little neighborhood. Like everyone else has stated tonight, traffic is a nightmare on Mount Comfort. I'm retired now, and I'm fortunate I can come and go as I please pretty much during the daytime. Last few weeks, I've had to go to the hospital almost daily. It's impossible to get out of Mount Comfort 7:30 in the morning unless you risk your life. I just ask that you table this and more thought is put into this development. I have nothing against the development. I'm sure it's going to happen, as the rest of them have in the past. But don't destroy another neighborhood to create a new one. As far as notifying members in the neighborhood, people who live there, I found out about this by accident. We had a burglar in the neighborhood recently, and I drove around just to check out the address. Otherwise, I wouldn't have seen this sign that was placed at the end of Raven behind the barbed wire fence. I had to get out and go up and read it. And by word of mouth, I found out about the meeting tonight and some of the proposals. I think you can do a better job of notifying the people that's going to be affected tremendously by this development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, then I'm going to close the floor to public comment and bring it back to the commissioners. And we have a few questions for staff that I guess we need to answer. Andrew, I guess this is probably best directed at you. What is our policy on notifying a community or a subdivision about any proposal that's going on in their area.
So when this property comes through with a subdivision, a preliminary plat, all of the adjacent property owners are required to be notified in writing with a letter. And in addition, public notice signs have to be posted on the adjacent streets. On this particular request, we're not really technically not discussing the development of this site and the connections. So we were not required to notify neighbors. We did ask the developer to go ahead and put public notice signs out and go ahead and notify the directly affected neighbors, which would be the property owner to the west and to the east. And so we did not do the full notification as if this were a subdivision.
Okay.
Neighbors will certainly have opportunity. They will be notified with a full notification when a preliminary plat comes through. As far as the comment about notifying everybody in the whole subdivision, that is not a city ordinance, so that would require city council to change an ordinance to require that to take place. I think once we send out all the letters to all the adjoiners along this, that's quite a few property owners around, and I believe the developer is here and the engineer, so hopefully they can start connecting and communicating with the neighborhood to make sure they're aware of things going on.
Okay, thank you very much. We also had a question from Mr. Smith about a dotted line on the map. Would that be you, Jesse? Do you know what area he was talking about on the...
My guess is he was referring to the master street plan that shows a yellow dotted line up Gooseberry.
Okay.
In 2011, more collector streets, more streets were added to the master street plan map that was adopted. And so that's shown as a potential, as all dotted lines are shown as potential to be evaluated when land develops. What we do know about Gooseberry today is that there's not sufficient right-of-way to connect Gooseberry to the north, and that was discussed in 2006 as well, and I believe the engineers for the developers looked at that a few more times, and unlike Woodlark and Raven, that will continue to have that discussion because those rights-of-way were platted all the way to their property line, Gooseberry was not done, so it really cannot be extended without the property owners agreeing to it, which they would not at this point.
Okay. Alrighty then. I think that pretty much answers everyone's questions, I hope. Do we have any comments from the commission?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Hoskins. Sorry.
Think about that for a second.
I started to say Hoffman.
A couple of questions for staff. Jesse, apparently there was some type of agreement or something in the past that a certain number of lots would be built prior to the bridge being built. What was that number?
It was in the 70s, and that was part of the resolution.
77.
77.
How many lots have been built?
0.
I'm sorry?
0, that was part
zero.
of...
Okay.
Yeah.
So this has nothing to do with the subdivision to the north?
Exactly. This was, the resolution that was passed in '06 was only for the property we're talking about tonight, Crystal Springs Phase 4, so nothing's been built.
Okay. Okay, so this bridge, if this property ends up, because it's a very large piece of property, if it ends up being developed by multiple builders, who pays for the bridge?
In most cases, you wouldn't see such a large development, and so that's a difficult question to answer, but what you normally have is assessments. So you would have, similar to Mud Creek out between Joyce and Front Street, we take assessments. So as there's an area that impacts that bridge if it's built, and so an assessment is taken based on the traffic impact of each development on the capacity of that bridge.
Okay.
So that's likely what you would see in this scenario if you had smaller subdivisions built.
Okay, so the development to the north did not pay any assessment on this bridge?
That's correct.
Okay. I guess the next question is we're not discussing the development or any connections tonight, yet the very topic in front of us is a connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we make some kind of educated decision without seeing alternative connections?
That's why we recommended tabling it. Yeah,
In other words, wouldn't they have to kind of go through the preliminary plat process for us to be able to make such a decision?
I think that would certainly be helpful, and we've seen this a few times, I think, in really the last couple of months, where someone's leading forward with some master street plan questions because they can have such a strong impact on the finances and the final design of your project. And so a lot of applicants are leading out with that question first so they can finalize their plan secondly. And that's what the applicant's doing here and just trying to determine what the impacts of this street connection will be on their development. And that's really why we're tabling it. They're showing connections to the west and east, and they hope to get those connections to the west and east, and that will help them distribute the traffic that we and the neighbors and others have to the south, if they don't build a bridge. But at this point, those agreements aren't there.
Well, it does sound like they're gonna get the one to the west.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like they're going to get the one in the west, and that's a conversation we've had more recently as well with that property owner, Andrew did, and so that gave us some more concern with, we can't really make a decision on removing a street connection to the north if we feel pretty confident that one to the west can't be made because it won't be provided by that property owner. It only leaves the connections to the east, and at this point, there's just question marks to those, and so that's why we're recommending that it be tabled at this point.
Does the street Kinswick run all the way to this property?
It does not.
How far away is it?
That was discussed in '06 as well. That's Crofton Manor, I believe, subdivision, and that was platted with a street stub out purposefully, but their property didn't reach all the way to the north property line. I think the Kimbroughs may actually own a small piece of property in there, so it doesn't reach this piece of property.
Okay.
It can't be connected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Hoffman.
just a quick comment. I'm just looking at, what is this, page 23 of 41 in the traffic study. It seems to me that even if they did get the connection either to the east or to the west, that traffic would likely just go straight back to Mount Comfort and therefore just exacerbate the problem that we've been discussing. So I, for one, am going to be very skeptical of any solution that doesn't increase north-south connectivity.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Chesser?
I have a couple of questions. First, Jesse, very early on, you mentioned potential environmental impacts of a north connecting bridge, which I hadn't heard in the agenda. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I was being pretty general, but obviously for bridge construction, you're going to be impacting a significant portion of floodplain and floodway of Clapper Creek for the amount of fill, grading, construction activities. You're going to have to get into the stream bed itself to do these types of activities. So while there are practices that will take place to minimize disturbance, obviously all of us have seen some levels of construction. You're going to see a lot of siltation, erosion, and damages to the natural environment there. So that's, in a very general, broad sense, that's what I was.
So in other words, just the normal things that occur when you're building
Normal
a bridge.
construction.
There's nothing special. I hadn't heard it before, so that's why I wanted to clarify on that.
Nothing specific from staff's point.
Okay. I too am of the opinion that the bridge probably needs to be built. I wonder if any member of staff who feels qualified, if the chair would allow it, would opine briefly on the reason that we want more connectivity, not less, especially in terms of how it impacts traffic.
Yes, again, another general kind of big world point of view. The reason we're talking about connectivity and why we don't want to eliminate one, and why we have concerns with not having connections to the west and to the east, is that if you have a limited number of connection points, you're looking at all the traffic going one direction, all of it going out to Mount Comfort. And in fact, we heard from the neighborhoods is all these neighborhoods that have been built along Mount Comfort have one exit onto Mount Comfort, and that makes it extremely challenging if you only have one way in, one way out, just from a functional standpoint, not to mention that there are some emergency services concerns with that as well. And so you try to look for distribution traffic and connect all the neighborhoods together so that if you want to go north or if you want to go to the school or if you want to go east, that you have that ability to do so. It's not about creating cut-through so you can drive 45 miles an hour through your neighbor's neighborhood, but so that you have options to leave your neighborhood in different directions depending on where you're trying to get to.
Okay. That's the general routing options is what I wanted you to talk about a little bit. It looks to me like Woodlark Lane and Raven Lane were built with stub outs that were intended to go to the north. That is correct, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Whereas, as you mentioned, Gooseberry, it's basically impossible for that to occur, right?
That's correct. Private property owners own the land between the right-of-way and the north property line.
Okay. We don't really need to discuss, as you said, those southern connections at this point. It's just a question about the bridge, right?
Right.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't see how this occurs without the connection to the north. And I know that that means traffic will travel through the neighborhoods to the north, but the city does own those streets, do they not? Those are paid for and maintained by taxpayers, correct?
They're public streets, yes.
Public streets, so should be expected that they would be used by the public then. All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Do we have a motion to table this by any chance?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Brown?
Okay. It's my understanding that when completely developed, this subdivision will be around 273 homes, or 71 or 73 homes. That according to the applicant's traffic study, that would translate to about 2,600 average trips per day in and out of the subdivision. Right now, the master street plan shows 5 connections into that neighborhood, or into that subdivision. 1 to the north, 1 to the east, 1 to the west, and 2 to the south. I think due to the scale of the development and the acreages involved here, I think that the existing master street plan represents probably the best solution for supporting an efficient flow of traffic in and out of the subdivision. So with that, I would be leaning towards making a recommendation to table this for further discussion and request that the staff get with the developer to look very hard at trying to implement the master street plan as approved at this point in time, to have a maximum number of entrances and exits into this area to disseminate those 2,600 trips per day, so it's not negatively impacting any one community or neighborhood. As an example of this effort, I think that it would be good to work with the developer to look at this concept of phasing. All right, now we talked about 77 homes that could be built before the bridge, construction would start. We might want to look at increasing that number if there's some financial help that would render to the developer. But we'd want to tie any increase in that 77 to a schedule for the development of the east and west roads. But I did want to offer those comments, and I would be ready, to vote on a motion to table it for further discussion.
Okay, now, Commissioner Brown, I heard a recommendation that we table. Are you actually making a motion that we table this item?
Sure, I'd be glad to. I didn't want to stop anyone from further comments.
Do we have any other comments then?
Madam Chair, I would,
Sorry.
may I ask the applicant a question?
Yes, please.
Mr. Davis or Mr. Milholland, you've heard the discussion from the commission and from the public. Would the applicant prefer for the item to be potentially forwarded to the city council as is with a recommendation for denial, just to get the audience of city council, or would you prefer to have it tabled indefinitely?
Mr. Davis and Mr. Milholland? Just deny it and send it on, okay.
So, Madam Chair, at this point, the council does make the final decision on this. Hearing that the applicant wants to have that decision, I would recommend that the commission go ahead and forward it and either give a recommendation for approval or denial, whatever you wish.
Okay. Would you like to, Commissioner Brown, would you like to amend your motion to forward to the city council with maybe a recommendation of denial? Or,
I would probably yes, I would amend my motion to forward this issue to the city council with a recommendation. Again, the issue is just the bridge.
yes.
And the applicant's request is to eliminate the bridge from the master plan. That I would recommend that we would forward it with a recommendation to deny the applicant's request to amend the master plan, that we hold firm on the master plan.
Thank you very much. We have a motion to forward to the city council with recommendation for denial by Commissioner Brown and a second by Commissioner Hoskins. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Deb.
Sorry, before we call roll, could we just clarify our affirmatives and, so in voting in the affirmative, what action are we taking on this?
Mr. Garner?
A yes
For
vote
example.
would be to deny the request to remove the bridge.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I had one question.
Yes, Commissioner.
Andrew, the only move here is to forward with a recommendation of denial or approval. There's no just ability of this commission to just deny and have the applicant appeal?
Correct. The applicant would like for the item to go to city council, so instead of having it just stay here, they would just appeal it to have to appeal the process to the city clerk's office if,
I guess my only question is either one of those actions a recommend of denial, which is, if that's something that we can do, or a forward with a recommendation for denial, does either one of those tend to carry more weight with the city council in terms of, I don't know, do you see what I'm asking here?
yeah. I think just in this particular item the final decision cannot be made at the planning commission.
No matter what?
So I feel like it's appropriate not to just hold up this developer and to go through that process.
Thank you.
Okay, then, is that all the comment we have now? Anybody else? Okay. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll then?
Hoskins?
Yes.
Chesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Humphrey? Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Our next item of business is rezone 155033. I'll wait till everybody gets out here. We have time to drink.
Whenever you're going through all this, it's hard to remember everybody's name. They
Yeah.
you've known forever.
Yeah.
Who are you?
We need to hold firm on the master plan.
Okay. Our next item on the agenda is rezone 155033, 232 West Ash Street. And I am unsure how to pronounce this next name, so I'm gonna try and give it a shot.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
we're on item 10 on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna have to request to recuse myself for that
Okay.
particular item, if you don't mind.
That'll be fine.
Okay.
I think you can, go take a step outside there. Okay, this is rezone 155033, 232 West Ash Street, and the, Cotrumbus, maybe, is the name? Okay, sorry about that. Mr. Thompson, would you please give us the staff report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The subject property is located at 232 West Ash Street. That's mid-block between Gregg Avenue and Woolsey Avenue on Ash. It contains approximately 0.3 acres. And if you recall, this property recently came through with a request for RMF 24. Staff recommended at the time that rezoning be denied due to concerns with incompatibility with the surrounding single-family neighborhood. The item then went further on to City Council through an appeal process and failed at Council. The request tonight is a completely different request to rezone the property to RMF 12, so approximately half the density that they were seeking in the last request. The applicant has stated that their intention is to build an additional duplex on this property that does contain one single-family home at this time. Staff has received comments from the public, and both in opposition, and if you would, Mr. Autry, would you take that and pass that around? I received that this afternoon. That's an additional letter in opposition, citing that further density, in both cases, further density, further traffic, et cetera, are the concern of the residents of the neighborhood. Staff finds that this particular request, the lower density, on an acre this size would only allow a future development of any kind at 3 units. That's the maximum that we could ever see on this property, and we do feel that with the RMF 24 on the west and RSF 4 on the east, that this particular lot, consistent with our previous recommendation, does provide, this is the transitional lot, and we feel that it would be appropriate at this level of density to transition down to RSF 4 and find that that would be compatible with the single-family neighborhood as a transitional zoning, transitional lot. Land use analysis here, the City Plan 2030 does recommend, it is a residential neighborhood, does recommend a mix of residential types, and also, discusses that traffic on these minor streets, such as Ash, should protect the neighborhood basically, and you should respect the impact density is going to have. Staff does feel that in this case, a slight increase, there's already 1 unit there, adding a second or third unit is unlikely to have an adverse impact on this neighborhood. So with staff's finding that the request is compatible and in line with the future land use plan and with the existing land uses of the neighborhood, we're recommending at this time approval of this rezoning request, and that this be sent forward to City Council with your recommendation.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant present? So please come up and state your name for the record, and I'll try and pronounce it correctly in the future.
All right, it's Taylor Kutrubis.
Okay, that was way off.
You can say Kutrumbis, it's kind of more like Americanized, I guess. I don't know if it matters, but the pin is on our neighbor's house, and the house we're talking about is the small dot to the left of there. 232 West Ash is a couple hundred feet off of North Gregg Avenue, and it's a 0.3-acre lot. What we're trying to do, as Mr. Thompson mentioned, is retain the 900-square-foot home at the front of the lot that we recently remodeled, and then add a small, modest-sized duplex to the back. As you can see from looking at the map, the property is surrounded on 2 sides by large apartment structures, and then directly across the street, there's a single-family home with a lot that's been subdivided. There's a sign out front that says Aslan Place, and they use those as rental townhomes. So it's kind of like an apartment complex across the street. And then next door is a large duplex. I sent some pictures in. I don't know if we need to look at them or not, but I kind of took some photos of the land so you could get an idea of the area that we're talking about. But we think that this new construction would be of comparable style. Oh, yeah, here's the pictures. So this is the lot itself. This is across the street. Those are the townhomes I was talking about. That's the backyard where we would remove that shed, and you can see the apartments already butting up to it. So it's not really like a subdivision feel, is what I'm trying to get across. It's more rental-minded. This is the house when we were under construction, remodeling it. And then this is the duplex that's next door, and I just took a picture to show that there's a pretty dense line of trees and brush between our property and theirs as well, so it kind of would block the back of this from their view anyway. And then also, we own the apartment complex that's next door on the other side, and we have already a curb cut there and a strip of concrete that can go through. So we plan to make the main access point off of North Gregg anyway, so the traffic issue would not be a problem for Ash Street. You can kind of see between the two apartment buildings there's a tract of land. That's where the main access point would come in, where that car already is. So there would be no appreciable increase to traffic on Ash Street. There we go. So right there where that fence is and that big strip of grass, that goes straight through. So we'd come in through the parking lot here and then continue on where that silver car is, straight into the back of the lot. And we plan on putting a privacy fence behind that house on Ash Street, so if you were to drive on Ash Street, you'd never know that the new construction was there. And then also, if someone were to come in the future and clear cut this land and decide to build something else, this zoning would be in line with the neighborhood plan, as it wouldn't allow for any overbuilding. It would allow for a maximum of 3 units, which if you go through Fayetteville, through any residential neighborhood around this area, you'll find triplexes or, Victorian homes subdivided. I mean, it's not rare to see that. I don't think it would be kind of like out of control to have that there. I just wanted to say that we have invested over $1.5 million in this neighborhood alone, just in this past year, and we have a great vested interest in seeing it succeed and develop. We think that this new development would increase everyone's property value. We're going to use some of the financing to completely facelift the apartment buildings there on Gregg. So I think that it would, cause stimulation to this older neighborhood that's right in the middle of town and would help to, improve the whole area. We're not trying to make it an awful place for people to live. We want to make it better. That matters. And then I think it's in line with city plan goals, the 2030 plan, because the number one is infill and revitalization. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Infill this empty piece of land in the middle of town with livable spaces for residents, while also, giving places to live and revitalizing an area that's been pretty stagnant since, I think the 70s. So I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Like a cheat sheet up there.
Yeah. Do we have any public comment on this issue? Anyone like to address this?
I'm Irene Pritchard, and I live at 339 North Gregg Street. My interest in this rezoning is that my brother and I own the adjacent property of 220 and 222 Ash Street. My brother lives at 222 Ash. We oppose the rezoning. This is the Woodland neighborhood. It's not some vacant, abandoned neighborhood. There has been infill within the R4 guidelines in this one block in the past 9 years. Actually, 3 houses have been built or moved to this block at the R4 zoning. No one in the existing Woodland neighborhood, to my knowledge, has asked for a transition area between the R24 and the R4. There is a clean delineation between the R24 and the R4 already existing, with the higher density R24 facing Gregg, which is the major thoroughfare that it runs on the border. With the all the entrances and exit for these R24 apartments and townhouses and their parking lot facing Gregg. The R4 zoning within the Woodland area are all local residential streets, many of them without sidewalks, some without curbing. Designating 0.3 acres or 0.27 acres, I've got the notice of the 0.27 acres as a transition from R24 to R4 is not affected as a planning technique. it is more in line with sort of spot zoning to meet the wants and needs of a particular landowner at the expense of the larger neighborhood. One of the purposes of the master plan and zoning map is to protect existing neighborhoods, setting a precedent of adding the only R4 property in this woodland neighborhood would be a disservice to the whole neighborhood. The Planning Commission and Master Plan has encouraged infilling, and they has been infilling at the R4 level on this particular block, as I mentioned before. Reading the applicant's letter to the planning group, talking about this, vacant and barren lots. There's just really one vacant lot on the property right now, and that's directly behind my brother's duplex, my brother's and my duplex. I'm the silent partner in the duplex. And it is a fairly boggy area because it is at the bottom of the hill that starts with the VA hospital, and all drains down to that one area. The back part of my brother's lot is fairly damp most of the time. And as a personal concern, since my brother would be the one most impacted by the rezoning and tripling the density of the lot next door, would be the runoff and of putting in additional duplex with the driveways and the parking. You would have a lot of impervious surfaces. Y'all denied the rezoning request last fall for this to become an R24 because y'all did not think that the density was compatible with the existing neighborhood. And I'm asking you to deny it again. It's tripling the density. And it is a narrow lot, and it's a slippery slope. It sets a precedent. And what happens if somebody else within the within the woodland area who has a R4 lot and has a small house and wants to build a duplex? It goes downhill. And this is a very stable neighborhood. My brother's renter has been there for 15 years on the other side of his duplex. And I hate to see it. It's a slippery slope. And it happens, and this is, y'all need to protect this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Do we have any other members of the public? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the floor to public comment now and bring it back to the commission. Okay, thank you, ma'am. I'll bring this back to the commission now.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Hoskins.
Don't worry about it.
Mr. Tracy. Mr. Tracy, what I started to say.
That works for me. May I ask her a question?
The applicant or?
No, the lady that just spoke.
Yes, I would agree with that. Ms. Pritchard, would you please
Ms.
come
Pritchard,
back?
yes. I'm sorry. You say that your building, your house is where the little pointer is there?
Yes.
Okay. Is that a single-family home? Is that a duplex?
It's a duplex, but it's on a wide lot. We take up.
Okay, but that is a two-family home, though, or it's a duplex, right?
It's a duplex, yeah.
Thank you very much.
There are 2 bedrooms on each
Thank
side.
you. Which staff member had this? Is it Quinn? Now I'm having brain lapses. Quinn, question. What is our lowest multifamily rezoning available? Is it RMF 12?
No, sir, it is not.
RMF 6, isn't it?
That's correct.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, why, if the applicant is going to build a duplex, why did they ask for RMF 12 instead of RMF 6?
RMF 6 would not allow the density on that site that would allow a duplex to be built.
Okay.
RMF 12 is the minimum necessary zoning in order to accomplish their goal.
Okay, so how large was the site?
0.3 acres.
0.3, okay, that would be why then, okay.
Oh.
Gotcha. Okay. That's all I had, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Chesser.
I don't know who wants to answer this, but I can't, I'm assuming duplexes are allowed by right in RMF 12, correct? Okay, I think I already answered my own question. I guess a duplex could be built on the property as it is currently zoned by conditional use, but not a duplex in addition to this home that's currently there. Is that correct, Quinn?
Now you're looking at me, okay. Yes, it is, that's correct. Okay. It is allowed by right under the requested zoning. It is only a conditional use otherwise.
Okay, well, when the applicant came through previously and requested RMF 24, which was, I believe, the same that their adjacent apartment complex is built out to, my concern was that this would one day, you could one day raise the entire site and build a much larger RMF 24 development on this entire piece of property. I am somewhat mollified by the reduction to RMF 12 and by the assurance that given its size, no more than 3 units can be built. I'm actually very glad that it was pointed out that the pin was in the wrong house, because I was looking at the wrong house up there earlier, and it makes a little more sense to me where it's shown now. I'm torn on this issue, but thank you for your clarifications, Quinn. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have a question for staff. Maybe you could help me with Quinn. The existing house on this lot, how far is it set back off the street? 'Cause it's not far is about the answer, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't believe I can answer that.
Okay.
And just from memory, perhaps the applicant might know, but street is maybe the question, but it may also be right-of-way. I'm assuming this is a local street.
Yeah.
Which puts 25 feet of right-of-way from the center line. So I'm assuming that it's quite close, actually, to the right-of-way. And it could well even be within setback.
Okay. It does appear that it's very, very close there.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Hoffman.
I kind of see this condition as sort of a micro example of the urban transect that Commissioner Chester brought up at the last meeting. And because of that, I have to disagree with Ms. Pritchard. I do see this as a sort of appropriate planning tool, appropriate planning technique. I also happen to think that a certain amount of unevenness in the building fabric is a desirable attribute for urban neighborhoods. I think that there's, a good reason that the master plan encourages a mix of unit types, and for those reasons, I would be in favor of the rezoning.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Hoskins.
I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion to forward RZN 15-5033 to the City Council with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
And who was the second from? Autry. In looking at this property, I guess, my feelings are I would feel a little bit differently about it if it were not already next to a duplex, and I have to say that I am in support of forwarding this on because I feel like it's an appropriate use for the property. Mr. Garner, would you please call, we have a motion made by Commissioner Hoskins and a second by Commissioner Autry. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Hoskins?
Yes.
Chesser?
Yes.
Brown? Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunt?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Motion passes.
That is our last item on the agenda tonight. Do we have any announcements by staff?
We have a subdivision committee meeting this Thursday, and I think the commissioners, committee members already have responded, so thank you.
Okay. And that is the last item. That adjourns our meeting, and we are done.